You're inside the press box. Christian FM Sports presents Inside the Press Box, where we discuss all sports from our favorite high school team to college and pro. Here's your host, Paul Tipton and Gary Paris.
Here we are, folks. Playoff time. Welcome inside the press box. Paul Tipton along with Gary Paris. As this is the time of the year, as a Vero fan, you really start to get excited. Playoffs are here, and last Friday night we confirmed what we had suspected all along: who our opponent's going to be for round one of the playoffs, which, by the way, will be at the Citrus Bowl. It's going to be Lake Nona taking on Vero Beach. Now, you got two district champs that are going to be facing each other. Vero Beach at the 4 seed, Lake Nona at the 5 spot. And it's going to be Lake Nona coming into the Citrus Bowl to see if they can, basically, I would say, Gary, upset the Fighting Indians, who I would think have to be the favorite.
I would absolutely agree with you. And, Paul, when you say playoffs, you always think Vero Beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's become automatic around the state. And the very first thing people say to you, Vero Beach, who do you guys open up with? You know what I mean?
Right.
You already know you're either in the playoffs, but Lake Nona is a worthy opponent. They're 7-3.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, Paul, they would have been ahead of us because we had identical. They were the district champs and we were our district champs. Their strength of schedule is the big difference between them being number 4 and number 5.
Yep.
And because of that, the teams we played. So you got to say, okay, why did we took on a tough schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to go through this in a minute about our opponents and how many of them are in the playoffs and how many of them were district champs. And it's going to be interesting to that. And that's how they came up with us being number 4 and Lake Nona being number 5. They're a good opponent. They're played their best ball at the end of the year, just like we are right now. We're playing our best football, I think. I don't know if we've had our best game yet, but I think we're getting better because we started out with so many young kids on our team.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like 18 freshmen and sophomores that were dressing out and participating in games for Vero Beach High School. And so with you that much age or, talent you have, Coach Jankowski probably did one of his best ever coaching jobs. Freshman quarterback, freshman receivers, defense, adjusting putting kids on both sides of the ball, and seeing how they work and everything together, finding those combinations, and we played a very hard schedule in the beginning, and we took our lumps, and but this team it bounced back and it won 6 straight ball games, and we've got a home game, so. I mean, I'm proud of Vero Beach. I'm proud of Coach Jankowski and his staff, the way they were able to put this team together and the way to be able to for the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is what you hope, Gary, that, putting together the schedule that Vero Beach put together, you hope that the payoff now is that you're ready to face the type of opponents that you're going to see in this bracket for Region 3. We're Class 7A. And it starts with this Friday night against Lake Nona, the Lions. Looking back at our schedule, you mentioned, the first 3 ball games that we lost. We went 0-3. Well, O'Galley finished up 9-1. They're the district champ. Buchholz, 7-3 in the playoffs. Didn't win their district championship. They lost to Nice, which, by the way, is probably arguably the best team in the state of Florida.
The whole state of Florida.
Right, the whole state of Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're number 2.
Yeah.
And then you got Homestead at 4-4. They're also in the playoffs. They didn't win their district championship, but those 3 teams are all in the playoffs. Now, of the 9 games that we played, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those opponents are all in the playoffs. 3 of those are district champs.
That tells you about the strength of schedule we have, and that's the reason why we're number 4 and Lake Nona was number 5.
And the one team that we didn't get to play because of Hurricane Milton, Rockledge, also in the playoffs, also a district champ.
Absolutely. What a tough schedule. And it's a team that has goes out every week and gets better.
Yep.
I mean, really, you say to yourself as a coach, I can't get much better than this, or we still got room to grow. Well, that in the old cliche is we got a lot more to do. We got a lot more to grow. Vero Beach has been growing every game. I mean, you got a freshman quarterback, a 14-year-old young man that literally took the snaps from the beginning of the season and has led his team to this 6-3 record and has thrown for close to 1,800 yards this season and didn't have that 10th game.
Yeah, true.
And he's the second leading rusher, or actually he's the leading rusher on the team.
Yeah,
because our running backs have been banged up.
Right. Yeah.
And so you've got it's. You and I see Lenny every Tuesday night at Cap's Pizza for Coach's Corner, and the most fun thing about Coach's Corner is what we learn about through the week.
Yeah.
And what we learned about through talking with Coach Jay about everything, about the program, and his eyes get as big as silver dollars, and his smile is just unbelievable when we talk about Champ Mons. I mean,
why wouldn't it?
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's
Holy cow!
I mean, we just can't. He's not amazed anymore. He's not surprised anymore. It's just that what this young man, student of the game, understands it. He comprehends the offense. He knows where his athletes are supposed to be, the receivers. And Coach will tell you this: we run these routes with so many reps so that they do know where they're supposed to be. And and you gotta, when you got a 2-hour practice, you've got segments that you work in, and if he's not ready to quit that segment, he's going to make sure they get what they're supposed to learn on route running, catching the ball, the quarterback's timing on everything. He's done a great job of with a freshman, and he's got all of his receivers coming back. They're either freshmen, juniors, sophomore or juniors. We don't have a senior out there on the receiving corps. They're all coming back.
Yep.
So by saying that, this team has gotten better each week, and you got to be proud of your Fighting Indians folks out there because they're young, and it is so much fun to watch them grow and to have mature into their positions, whether it's defense or offense. They do a good job, and I'm proud of them.
So Gary, taking a look at Lake Nona, the Lions coming in here 7-3. Like I said, they won their district. And speaking of which, Vero Beach has 3 opponents in the bracket, or 3 teams in the bracket that represent our district. Us, Treasure Coast, and Fort Pierce Central made it in. Fort Pierce Central down at the 8th spot, Treasure Coast at the 6th spot, and then, of course, Vero Beach at the 4th spot. Looking at Lake Nona's schedule, though, there are 2 teams that also made it into our playoff bracket that Lake Nona faced. One of them being Dr. Phillips, who was the district champion in that bracket. Dr. Phillips beat Lake Nona 34-7, and then you had Toho out of Kissimmee. That was a team that Lake Nona beat 17-0. So a 1-1 there of teams that are in our bracket there. Don't know that it tells you a lot about who the Lions are, but when you look at the stats, Gary, they seem, I think, fairly well balanced.
Well, they do a good job of. You're right. I don't know how much more balance you can get when you throw them for 1,322 yards and you ran for 1,383 yards. They run. They like to run more than they pass because they have 268 rushing attempts, and then passing they attempt 189. So I mean they're a balanced team, but that's not. If you were to sit there and say, what do they do most of? They like to run the ball first and pass the ball, and whereas in our case, you had stats on Vero Beach. You mentioned before we went on the air that we were balanced.
Very balanced.
I mean, one play more running than we did passing.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty balanced there. obviously, you and I both like to kind of break things down, and it's like the game within a game kind of thing. So when you start looking at the Lions, you start thinking about, okay, what is it we got a key on? I think, as you said, they lean a little bit more on the run game than they do their passing game. So then you start thinking about, okay, the front line of our defense has got to be able to keep them in check. They've got one running back that's rushed for 447 yards. They've got another one that's rushed for 317 yards, a third one for 310, and a fourth one that's over 300 yards as well. They've gotten 15 touchdowns on the ground compared to 10 in the air. So as you can see, they want to establish that running game first and foremost, it seems, and then they'll rely on that passing game once the team starts stacking up against the run.
They are. You're right. They have their quarterback as a dual threat quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Dove is his name. He's a senior. He has thrown for 1,181 yards, but he's ran for 306 yards. So he's a dual threat running back, a quarterback rather, that can pass and run. As you said, they got 4 running backs, counting the quarterback. But they're a very talented team. They got a good receiver in Emmanuel that's caught 28 passes. He's averaging almost 10 yards a catch, close to it, 8.3. He's got 4 touchdowns. So they got one major receiver they depend on, and they got 4 running backs they depend on, counting the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And the quarterback is completed like 62% of his passes, which in high school is, I always say, that's a good number. Anything above 60 means you're doing good. It's not like if you're in that 50s or in the 40s, you're being forced and you're under a lot of pressure too.
Yep.
So he's a good quarterback, good leader. He's thrown for 10 touchdowns. He has only thrown 4 interceptions all year. So that tells you a little bit about.
Yeah, and if you want to compare apples to apples, so to speak, Champ Mons on the season has completed 70% of his passes for a little over 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns to 5 interceptions.
And to me, that is that would be a great season for any athlete, especially a senior.
Yeah.
This again, here sounds repetitive so many times. He's a freshman. He's 14 years old.
Yeah.
And he's completing 70% of his passes. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in the 60s, you're doing good. 70%, that's unbelievably good.
Yeah. So you got to think that, the Lions from Lake Nona, they're watching the film and they're going, all right, number 7, that's who we got a key on. We got to take care of number 7 here. And, Champ Mons, again, we want to compare notes. As Gary said, Dove for Lake Nona, the quarterback, he's carried the ball 71 times for a little over 300 yards, 6 touchdowns. Well, Champ Mons has carried the ball 92 times for 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, again, you know that Lions defense is going to be going, all right, he's the guy we got to focus on. So that means for the Vero offense, some of our running backs are going to have to step up. Some of our receivers are going to have to catch maybe a few more passes and make some bigger plays.
Well, when you get stats like that as a quarterback, a lot of that is you're protecting, your coverage is good downfield.
True.
And you're blanketed across, and then you got to do something with your legs.
Mm-hmm.
And you are, like, say, for example, you do a drop back, and all the linebackers and everybody turns their backs and they run for depth. About 12 yards, you need 6 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find it right up the middle instead of throwing the ball. You got that option to take it and run.
Yep.
And if you can get your first down, and so both these quarterbacks have that tendency, and you can see it's going to be kind of like a mirror across from each other with their offense and our offense looking at each other.
And of course, just the overall intensity, Gary, of this game goes up exponentially because of the fact that it's win or go home. Yeah. There's no we can rebound and get a win next week. No, this is it. If you lose this ball game, your season's done.
Yep, and you're right. And again, Vero has faced that every year, and I think the opportunity for us to go to the second round is good. I think we're a good team, and how it would break down is that 4 plays 5, and if 4 wins, it plays number 1 because the number 1 plays 8 if 1 wins.
Right.
And if your scenario is all your top 4 teams win, so 2 would play 3, 1 plays 4.
Right. So Palm Beach Central is number 1 in our bracket.
Exactly.
They're going to play Fort Pierce Central, who's number 8.
8.
So you got to think, Palm Beach Central obviously would be the favorite in that ball game. They're at home. They're the number 1 seed. So if they win and we win, we go to play Palm Beach Central in Wellington.
That's probably going to be the scenario, folks. I don't predict games or saying like this. I like our chances to win. I like Palm Beach Central's position to win. They're a talented team, and they're a very good team. And so I just feel like we'll be seeing them. We saw them a couple years ago, if you remember. Yeah. It rained, and I felt bad for Maurice.
I think rain is not painting the picture very well, Gary.
That was a hard game for... I remember Maurice Smith, our quarterback, it was like downpour, and he did a great job.
He did.
What beat us was a bad snap.
On a punt.
Yeah. And Lenny was thinking, all right, we'll pin them back, and we got the momentum going, and and all of a sudden, here goes a snap over the punter's head, and the ball we recovered about the 15 or 8, something like that, and the Central took it in, and it was the difference of the game.
It is. And how many times have we seen that where, it's just, especially like a special teams type of play, that happens that just totally changes the outcome of the game ultimately.
Yeah, and I'm not getting us ahead of Nona, but we're talking about Palm Beach Central, a number 1 seed in our region.
Well, everything, if you move ahead, pretty much everything's got to go through Palm Beach Central.
Exactly right. So we bring those up. Not that we don't we're overlooking Lake Nona. We're not.
Right.
Trust me.
Right.
Coaches won't let anybody overlook. We can. You and I, because we're not out there throwing passes. We're not out there tackling. We're opening our big mouths and talking all the time.
Well, I think what's kind of impressive here, Gary, is, you got Palm Beach Central at number 1.
Yeah.
Jupiter at number 3. Yeah. They're in the same district.
Yeah.
Palm Beach Central was your district champ. Your runner-up in that was Jupiter.
Yeah.
And they had enough strength of schedule points and ratings and whatnot that they ended up in that 3rd spot. That tells you a little bit about that particular district. It's a pretty tough district.
It's absolutely tough. Let's put it this way. Playing Lake Nona, okay, I like it. I like us playing because they're they've earned the right to be there, and we open up with a game where I think we have a shot at winning. Okay? And then after that, it's no matter who you play.
Well, yeah. It gets harder.
It gets
harder.
Every game gets harder after that.
Yeah, and it's supposed to.
Right.
It's supposed
and people
to.
always say, well, why can't Vero Beach ever get by the 3rd game? Okay, you stop and think. By the time you get to the 3rd game, there's only 2 games left.
Right.
And you're talking about the top 8 teams in the state of Florida to go to 4 teams in the state of Florida. And it's tough. It's hard. It's hard. People don't realize, yes, why does Lakeland or Venice, and they got more people to draw from. The open enrollment has made the game different.
Well, you bring up a good point. So, as an example, Lake Nona. Okay, I looked this up over the weekend because I'm like, Lake Nona, you've heard of, but you don't really know much about, until you really face an opponent. You don't really study them all that much. They have over 4,000 students. That's pretty impressive. They're in that Orlando area. So you think about teams like Dr. Phillips, you got Lake Nona, you've in the past we've had Orlando Evans and those kind of. There's so much population there that their student enrollment is so high. Now compare that to Vero Beach, which is like what I think pushing towards 3,000 students.
No, we're close. We're a little bit further than that.
Are we now?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's still
we count.
They have a good 500 students more, I would say, than Vero Beach does. And that can be a difference.
Anytime you get around 3,000 students in a high school or more, you're big high school.
Yeah.
There are college campuses that are small colleges don't have that many students are going into them. But it is. And again, people say, well, why haven't we got by? Well, geographically, we're in a different location.
Yeah.
Than a lot of Orlando has a lot of working families, a lot of those type of people. When I say that, is that where Vero's a retirement community,
right?
And we cater to the retirement community.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that industry. We don't have those kind of jobs that that would bring in families that have big offensive linemen.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah. You know what I mean? Or we got those running backs and ball players and stuff that So you're sometimes you play in an area what you get. In Vero's, it's tough to go and be and win the third game.
It is, and the other side of this too. And I know this almost sounds like we're trying to set the stage for like when they lose. That's not really the whole point here. The whole point is the playoffs are a lot harder than I think maybe most people really consider. Think about this: to get a state title, you have to go 5-0. That's half a season. So if you've already played anywhere from 9 to 10 games, to get the state title, you'll play 14 to 15 games in a season at high school.
Yep, you're right. You're 100% right. And a lot of people, the wear and tear on that, the depth in a team.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. These cities that live like Venice over there, you don't hear much about anybody else outside their Naples area or a Sarasota area because they're the team in that area.
Right. And I know some will probably make the argument, well, what about these other schools that are in the lower classes? Well, I think once you get past, lower than 6, they don't play 5 games. I think it's down to 4 games because the way the brackets shape up is different.
Right.
But look, at the end of the day, you got to just play the games that are in front of you and try to win and do your best.
Well, you got a choice. Like there are a lot of teams from Miami. Miami Central, I think, is a 3A team or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't even know if they're going to be in the playoffs.
Well, I use them as an example because they had to forfeit games.
Booker T and
all that. Yeah. You don't look at the classification they're in. You look at the kids they got.
Right.
And you'll see that a team like Lakeland and Venice are year in and year out probably two of the best teams in the state of Florida.
Now, Vero Beach has got a lot of really good players.
Yep.
Really good players. I mean, you look at the defense, you think of guys like TJ Alford. You got to start there. You think of Deuce Montgomery. I don't think we're going to get RJ back for the season. I think he might be done. We don't know that 100%, but, all indications say probably not. I'm only bringing his name up because that's another D1 committed player to Illinois.
Yeah.
Then you've got guys like Afion Rivers that, solid player. Then you got guys that, are still gaining experience like Woods and Devin Green and those guys on that defense. And Tristan Davis.
Bobby Burbick.
I mean, they've had great games. They've had a good season. But this is going to be different now. It's the playoffs.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Paul. And, but I like our shot against Lake Nona. I think we have, if we go out and we play good solid ball, I think we'll beat them. But we got to play that. You got to respect them.
Of course.
But you got to go out and you got to do what you do best.
Yeah, they didn't slide into the playoffs.
No,
they won their district championship. They punched their ticket.
Yeah,
and this is not an easy first round opponent. we gotta take this very seriously. So, all right, well, that's going to do it for this week as we get set for our first playoff game against Lake Nona. The game will be at the Citrus Bowl. We have not heard an official start time yet. Typically, they like to do 7:30, but as Coach told us that if they agree upon it, they may actually bump that up to a 7 o'clock kickoff start. So once we know about that, we'll make sure to post that so that you've got all that information. Biggest thing is do what you can to get your tickets. Let's get out to the stadium. Let's support the team, and let's get a win here and move on to round 2 of the playoffs. Gary Parrish, Paul Tipton in the press box. Thanks for joining us, Vero Nation. As always, go Indians.
Thanks for joining us inside the press box. For more, go to ChristianFM.com.